Welcome to Art Therapy and You. I am Meaghan Wiggins, licensed mental health therapist and art therapist. Um, just here to talk a little bit about how art therapy can be helpful to survivors, caregivers, their families. So let's jump right on in, why don't we? First and foremost, who am I? Like I said, my name is Meaghan Wiggins. As you can see, I've had a little bit of a haircut since this picture was taken. But as I said, I'm a licensed mental health professional and full-time art therapist working with cancer support community. I'm also um, I'm also an oncology patient navigator, certified generalist. I've been working exclusively with survivors and their families for the past 4 years. Fun fact about me is that I enjoy sweets, have a really bad sweet tooth, and I think otters are really adorable. So that's just a little bit about me. We can go ahead and jump right on in. So, art therapy, what is it? Those are two two words that, maybe you've heard that term before, can sound a little bit vague. I'm sure you're asking, Meaghan, what the heck is art therapy? What does that mean? Well, I'm so glad you asked. I have here the wonderful, very long definition provided by the American Art Therapy Association. And while it is very long, we're going to focus on some important aspects of this definition. So, first off, art therapy is a mental health and human services profession. Um, and that is a master's level profession that uses applied psychological theory and the human experience within a psychotherapeutic relationship. So, what does that mean? That's a lot of words. In English, that means um, this is a profession that combines psychological, psychiatric knowledge in order to use the art to process how you're dealing with any issues that are coming up in your life. Um, Really, we're focusing on using the art that you're making, using the process of making the piece in order to look at what it's saying about how you're doing in your life, how you're managing, or what other issues that might be there that maybe you're not as aware of. It can be there's a lot of themes populations that we'll dive into in this presentation that art therapy can be useful for, but we'll also explore how specifically caregivers and survivors can utilize art therapy. So, getting a bit more specific, what is not art therapy? Coloring books. Coloring books are great. They can be really awesome relaxation tools. They're great guided meditation tools. They are not art therapy. Same with painting at home. If you're an artist, you like to create art at home, just to relax. Maybe it's something you do as a hobby or maybe even professionally. That doesn't necessarily mean that's art therapy. Well, and I'm sure, raise an eyebrow. I mean, Meaghan, well, it helps me feel better. I feel really relaxed when I create. That's wonderful. That, however, means you're doing something that's therapeutic art, that is. It's not therapy. And I want you to think bigger, not every talk you have with, your loved ones, with your family members is necessarily a therapeutic conversation. That's the same with art. Not every single piece that you make is going to be therapeutic. Um, and more importantly, this is not art class. I always like to remind people that I am not I'm not a teacher. I'm not there to grade you or judge what you're making. We're strictly focused on the process of making art. So, with that, what is art therapy? So glad you asked. Art therapy is creating an image with a trained professional, and we can look at what that image then says about your life. Typically, you're making something very specific with an art therapist based on your needs or what you're exploring in your relationship with your therapist. And typically, you'll have specific materials and specific things you'll be asked to make. Which again, we're not focused on mastery of the material, just exploration of the material and what that can elicit within you. We have specific training, our therapist that is, to guide you through the creative process in order to understand your art and thereby understand yourself on a more deeper, more intimate level. And with that, it is a master's level mental health profession. It's not, arts and crafts. We're not just simply creating because it feels good. We're, doing some hard work and going deeper with the art. So If all that doesn't entirely tie it together for you, I do have a quick story I'd like to share just about, art therapy, an art therapy directive I've done with a client. We'll call this person um, Haley. Haley, I'd worked with for about, I'd say, 4-ish months. We've done probably like 8 or 9 sessions together. And we were working together within her survivorship. She was a breast, or is a breast survivor, excuse me, um, and had survived stage 4. So one thing, we talked about one day is she said to me, Megan, I'm really struggling with accepting, just myself as a survivor. I don't feel that that word really justifies my experience. I don't feel connected to this idea that I have survived something. I said, you know what, that sounds like a great place to make some art. So I asked her to create an image of what survivorship might look like for her. What does that word mean to her? Create an image of that. And, we talked about, the different representations that were there, some hope, some fear, anxiety, connections to family, and even a bit of freedom within that. However, I noticed, in the image, she created something to represent herself and kind of separated herself from all of these. So we were able to have a conversation about, maybe we do have this understanding of what survivorship can mean on paper and, what those aspects mean and what are important to us moving towards survivorship as a person. But we moved further into discussing what about what we've been through makes us hesitant to embrace all these parts of survivorship, even though they are natural. Um, so hopefully this can give you an idea of a place you can go with an art therapist. Again, that art, the art she made was just the vehicle to get us to the deeper part of the conversation and was a great way to see those different parts visually represented. Yes, just a little story for you. So, okay, Megan, I'm sure you're hearing me, that's all great, but who does art therapy actually help? Well, great question. It can be utilized with just about any population. There's this wonderful misunderstanding that it's only utilized for children, and that's completely not true. Some examples I have listed are, substance abuse, eating disorder, various types of trauma, adolescence, LGBTQ plus, and those with Alzheimer's, excuse me, and dementia. Most importantly, survivors and caregivers. Art therapy is not something that has to be for one specific group of people or one specific person. It can help all if you're open to it as a process. Okay. Well, I know you're hearing me. I hear you saying, okay, Megan, well, what about someone like me? I'm a survivor. I'm facing cancer, or I'm a caregiver. I want to know how art therapy can be there to help my patient or help me help my patient. So some benefits include, as reported by Mayo Clinic, we see cortisol, our stress hormone, go down significantly. There was a 21.6% reduction in anxiety levels. Another study specifically with bedside art therapy, showed that it was effective in reducing 20 out of the 21 participants' stress levels. I don't know about you, but that's pretty significant. It can also increase your insight into problems. One thing I always like to say, sometimes talk therapy is really helpful for people. Sometimes music therapy is really, really helpful for people. And sometimes doing art can really help give you a different way to look into your problems, maybe have some greater insight into what's going on. Another study showed that 14.6% of participants reported an increase in positive mood. We can see improved self-esteem and awareness. And another study showed that 51 out of 54 participants felt that doing art therapy specifically doing their chemotherapy treatments was largely beneficial. Some things to note is they felt the experience was largely relaxing and was helpful in just expressing themselves and maybe finding meaning in what they were making, which can be understandably difficult while you're getting treatment done. Some directives are helpful in communication and conflict resolution. And some common themes that are explored, mind you, these aren't the only themes, are identity, control, communication, and legacy or end of life work. So, things you'd see in a hospice setting or as you approach the end of your journey with cancer. So, just some hopefully greater insight into some facts and figures and evidence that shows yes, art therapy is really, really beneficial and we can see it working. So, you are now 100% convinced to start your art therapy journey. I've convinced you, you're ready to move onward and upward and want to find an art therapist. So, how do you do that? Great question. At my organization, Cancer Support Community, we do offer some art therapy. In this COVID world, some of that does look a little bit different. Some of that is virtual. We do have an open art studio every Tuesday, starting at 6 p.m. I believe it's about an hour. And that is guided by an art therapist. More laid back, more relaxed. You can create whatever you'd like to work on. Or sometimes the art therapist will bring a more therapy-esque directive for you, something more specific. I know one thing that she's done is at the beginning of the year, she's asked people to set their intentions and make art around those intentions. So just an idea of how more therapeutic can look. But of course, you're always welcome to just create your own art, engage with other survivors, caregivers, socially, bit more relaxed, may not necessarily go to that deeper therapeutic level if you're not comfortable. Individual sessions, completely free at Cancer Support Community, as well as our open art studio. Everything we offer is 100% free to survivors and their families. We are able to offer this virtually and in person as it would be one-on-one. Some groups we offer that are a bit more therapeutic art, a bit more laid back, not necessarily art therapy all of the time. Coffee and coloring club, you bring your morning brew, can bring your favorite coloring book or coloring pages, and just do some meditative coloring with other survivors, just to relax every Thursday at 11 a.m. And then with Community Health Network, we do have an art therapy group that's every first Friday at 1 p.m. And if you do sign up for that, you do receive free art materials. You get a free art kit from us if you'd like to join that. There are art therapy centers in some hospitals. One thing that I myself have done, and you can see at other hospitals, are art carts on infusion units and in bedside units. That's where we would bring art materials to you, and you can either color or create a card or just talk about what's going on with an art therapist, a trained professional that's there to help you through it. Riley's Children's Hospital has an art therapy center where they do have 2 art therapists on staff. And St. Vincent's Breast Center does have an open art studio that is facilitated by a licensed art therapist. Private practices, another place where you can find art therapists are in private practices. These can vary, however, depending on where you're located. You can search on the American Art Therapies Association's website for more information pertaining to specific locations, or connect with your primary healthcare provider or another mental health professional. They may know someone and may be able to connect you if you're interested. And then lastly, I'd like to close out with this lovely quote from Aristotle: "The aim of art is to represent not their outward appearance of things, but their inward significance." I really feel like this encapsulates what art therapy ultimately is at its core. We're there to represent what's going on internally and how you're doing, not necessarily recreating something so it looks nice, that we're satisfied with how it looks, but what can it say about how we're feeling inside? So I'd like to thank you for taking out your time to listen and learn maybe a little bit more. Maybe you didn't know as much about art therapy. Hopefully you were able to gain some insight. Thank you.